There it is.
There you go. And so we are being recorded now. Be careful what you say. And Joanne, why don't you welcome folks and turn it over to Andy.
Oh, why, thank you very much. Welcome everybody tonight. I can't think of a better thing to do with our time right now than to start thinking about baseball and all that's coming up. I don't even want to talk about like strike and spring training and all that, but this is a good time for us to get a good lesson in stats and all about how it works. And I always am fascinated with what Andy Andres always has to say, because he makes it understandable even for us who are more inclined towards the historical aspect of baseball, but he will give us a great lesson in how to understand the stat part of baseball. So hang in there, guys. You're going to enjoy this. So Andy, jump right in.
Thank you for that introduction, Joanne. It's good to see some new friends and some old friends. Good to see Evan Katz and Seamus again, and Ken Liss from BU. Good to see Ken join, and some older friends I've known for a while. I am open to just about anything that you'd like to talk to, but what I wanted to start with was some data associated with what's been happening with spin rates. Spin rates has been measured since 2015 on pitches in Major League Baseball. So there's lots of data now on how spin rates have gone. I'm going to share screen and let's see if this works here. Here we go. PowerPoint. Let's see that. Let's see if this works.
There you go.
Are you able to see that?
Yep.
Good, good. This is from a PowerPoint I put together for a recent TED Talk. And I just want to just go through this slowly so you really understand what's here. I plot a little line of best fit, a linear line. It's not a great correlation, but it's enough of a correlation. That's why I want to point this out. On the y-axis is spin rate. And if these are all four-seam fastball spin rates, okay, so it's not the spin rate of all the different pitches, it's just the four-seam fastball. And the reason I chose it is because it's the most common pitch thrown. It's about, in the MLB database, it's about 40%, 35-40% of all pitches. But what every point here, every blue circle here represents one season for one pitcher. Okay, and it's a qualified pitcher. It's not every single pitcher. It's sort of pitchers that pitched enough in that season. But so Trevor Bauer now has, on this graph, he's got 7 data points because it was every season that he played. Now you can see the range of velocities of the four-seam fastball. This is the average for a year. So you can see that the average for a year goes from, you know, like 84 for a four-seam fastball. Very few people are pitching that slow, but there's a good 20 or so in that range. But then you've got some in the 98s and higher. But there's the cloud of the four-seam fastball velocities. And in the years 2015 through 2021, it goes from 88 to 98. That's sort of the range of velocities. The ranges of spin go from, you know, for these pitches, 1800 to about 2600. And these are averages. So there's a bunch of pitches in each of these data points, okay? And the Trevor Bauer example is trying to show you one key story from 2021 and the years before. Trevor Bauer admitted pretty much, not explicitly saying catch me like Gaylord Perry used to, but he pretty much admitted in many interviews that he started using different substances on the baseball to increase the tackiness, the stickiness of the baseball. So for 5 years, he averaged about 94 miles an hour and about a 2,300 spin rate for 5 years on the same four-seam fastball pitch. And then it leaped from 2,300 to almost 2,800 for 2020 and 2021. Now, those are smaller samples for him, obviously, right? 2020 was shortened, 2021, he didn't pitch the full year. So maybe there'd be regression on that. The point of this is to really show that his spin rate went up. And he talked blatantly about how it happened. He talked about learning how to pitch with the sticky stuff on his fingers and on the ball to be able to create spin. And this was a big story in 2021 where they decided they were considering, and then they finally decided to catch the cheaters who were using foreign substances on the baseball. They changed the rule. They told people they were going to change the rule around July 2nd, then they implemented the change. And I can show you the spin rate data that affected this. Let's see, the next. Oh, the reason why they did this is this data set. This is probably pretty well known, but the top is averages. You can see that here. These are hits per game, okay, for teams. And these are strikeouts per game for teams. And you can see strikeouts went above hits for the first time in the history of baseball the last 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Strikeouts, there were more strikeouts in a game than there were hits in a game the last 3 years. And that was one of the things that I think just caused a real thought of like, this is why I think baseball decided they needed to change the rules. This graph here, and I'll go through this slow. I just want to show this data so you can sort of picture how this works. These blue dots labeled 15, 16 through 20, that's the whole summary of every pitch thrown that year, every four-seam fastball pitch that year for the whole year. And you can see there's a real increase here. Now, this is not, this is not like a 200 revolutions per minute increase. And what we're seeing here is probably not every pitcher is learning how to use the sticky stuff, but it was certainly enough. Most likely the sticky stuff can cause this big increase in, that we can see between 18, 19, and 20. 16, 17, 18 is about the same. Something got a little different than 15. That could be technology, but it's increasing by a pretty significant amount. Once baseball understood that it was still getting worse in 21, that's the blue dot 21, which averages the whole data set. Okay, once you got to 21 here, I think baseball said problem isn't going away, it's going to continue, and they decided to change the rules. And that's what this data set show right here. This is the whole year. Now you have those other data points that are full years. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 is a full year. 21 is that first section before they changed the rules. The 21 dot averages from the start of 2021 till about June 2nd. And then you see this drop. But you should also appreciate that there's an increase again. Okay, these black data points is every four-seam fastball thrown that day in baseball. So it's a daily average of four-seam fastballs thrown. It's not all pitches, it's just the specific four-seam fastball run. But you can see the effect of the rule change, the drop, and then you could see this slight increase, which both things are interesting. One, it's really kind of cool. You can measure it. You can see the change that happened because of what the rule change, that the owners decided the rule change should be. So they changed the rules, decreased spin rates, which is what their intent was, but then it slowly creeped up. Now, the thing that should happen with this too is that often, if pitchers are getting better, and this sticky stuff thing was really out of whack in 2021, we should see the effect of the rule change. We should see offense kind of be depressed relative to normal offense in the first 2 months here where the spin rates are high, and then you should see the offense rebound. And that's what this data shows here. This is a monthly breakdown, and there's two lines here. There's two different monthly breakdowns. One is the black line here, the top line, is the average WOBA in every month for 10 years. The average for 10 years is the black line. The green line is 2021. I don't include 2020 for obvious reasons, because the reason is because we can see this sort of monthly effect. Now, these aren't huge changes in WOBA, but they're big enough to represent, and it's a big enough sample over 10 years to represent, there likely is a monthly effect on batting. And this is sort of well known too by batters' report of saying, yeah, it's harder to hit when it's cold, and just other measures of offensive performance. Yeah, offense goes down in September. Offense is always down in April. The summer months, it's a little bit higher. This is one of those reasons a lot of people don't mind baseball starting May 1st, for example, because then you get away from those cold months and the impact on offense. But you should appreciate that the green line really goes up. Okay, once June starts, once the rules in place, once spin rates go down, offense goes back to what it's been in the past 10, 11 years. So that's the data I want to start with, because I think what it does is show what's really interesting about the spin rate scandal, the sticky stuff, foreign substance scandal. Now, the other interesting thing is what happens this year. People are going to be paying attention to that. The other big story, I don't know how much people have heard about this, but the story of the two different kinds of baseballs that were used in 2021. This may not be a widespread story. It's out in the media. So if you're a baseball fan following everything, you've probably heard this story. But there's some interesting studies coming out about how there looks like apparent differences maybe between games at Yankee Stadium and other games. And so this is going to get researched. Baseball continues to say, we know there were two balls out there. It started because actual physicists measuring the baseball saw very clearly two different baseballs in 2021. They were very different, and they could test them and say, oh no, this is the older ball and this is the newer ball, and they could see the differences. And they would just sample baseballs from different games to test it. They would just measure them and study the actual baseball itself. So that's a great story that's happening too. What's going to happen to the baseball? MLB owns the baseball manufacturing now. They bought Rawlings. Rawlings makes the balls. So MLB is in control of the ball manufacturing and the ball distribution and everything else. It's just going to be interesting if we learn more about that in the coming months. But there was a question by Adam. MLB probably knows where the baseball went, but they're not telling anybody. Adam's asking, did MLB know which baseball was going where? Probably. They probably know this somewhere, and they can reconstruct this somewhere where the ball supplies went. The problem is that no one will ever know this in the public, I guess. I don't think this is going to be something they share, because if there's ever a way that it might cause an imbalance, the players, let's say you're a player that's going to get always the ball that doesn't fly as much, and then you can prove, oh, my offensive numbers were low because of just the random effect. I always went with the baseball. If that shows up, if everyone learns that there's a bias in how the baseball went, the batters won't be happy. The batters would be like, I've been ripped off. So MLB's interest is to never release this data. Never release the data where the ball, was at any one time, the two different kinds of balls being used. But the question is, what do they use this year? So we'll see. And Ryan is correct. Meredith did the study. Meredith and another friend, they did the work. They sampled the balls, and they would see the differences, and it became very apparent to them there were two different kinds of balls in play, in the 2021 season.
Wow. I didn't.
So, Seamus, that's a good question. Seamus, is anyone following the chat along with me? Maybe you should be. I'll repeat the observations here. After Adam's question, Bruce gave us the article where MLB admitted that 2 different balls were in play during the 21 season, but they had to admit it because Meredith wrote an article saying there were 2. And Meredith said in the public, there were 2. MLB's not saying anything. And finally, MLB got questioned. They had to come clean that there were 2 different balls in play. Adam also mentions the bettors, not just the batters, not just the owners, if they were impacted, their own team was biased, but bettors wouldn't be happy either. SABR Virtual, is that you, Bill? It must be. Oh yeah, it looks like you, Bill. You say we don't know about the future. You say, is it going to be 2 different balls in the future? I doubt it.
It was just running out of the old supply, weren't they?
Yeah, well, but yeah, I think that was part of it. But that's what they said in the article. But who knows? Because of this outcry, because this other scandal showing up about 2 different baseballs, I don't think MLB would make the mistake. Meredith Wills will get her hands on baseballs and analyze them. She will. It's, and they know, MLB knows they can't stop her. And she will, so they're going to be smart enough, I suspect, to use just 1 baseball this year. If they don't, that's not a good choice. If I were MLB, I'd say, yeah, make it 1 this year, please. But Seamus asks about UMass Lowell. UMass Lowell, I still think has the Baseball Research Center. It's kind of cool. They did a lot of bat testing. And they did some ball testing too. I don't think they have a straight up relationship with MLB anymore. MLB is involved, has a much larger research group now, doing lots of different research. I don't think they're affiliating anymore with UMass Lowell. I think they do a lot of stuff internally. At least they've hired a lot of physicists, they consult with a lot of physicists, and they understand a lot more some of the basic physics like this. So I don't think UMass Lowell is affiliated. Bruce is asking the question, I'm not sure what Bruce is referring to about the 1 ball, Bruce, is that it? About 1 ball in 2022?
I don't think that was me that asked that question.
Oh, I'm confused.
Somebody asked, do you think pre-tack balls will be agreed to in the next CBA?
I actually think, that's on the table. I think that might be the case, but what's going to happen is pitchers will still experiment. They will still go to different pitching facilities and experiment. That's what Trevor Bauer did. And he talks about this openly, about experimenting with different substances on his fingers, applied to the ball, and he measured spin while training. And he's the guy empirically figuring out, yeah, spider tack was my favorite. And he probably used spider. A lot of this he kept to himself. A lot of this he would tell his teammates, but he was trying to find, and he says, I'm trying to find the best substance for my finger to put on my finger to get the best rotation on the ball. That's going to continue. There's no way to stop that because you go to different pitching facilities and it's widespread to measure spin rates while you're training. So that's I'm sure that's in 50 states by now. So you can do this yourself as a pitcher, and I think pitchers will still experiment with how to increase this, even if it's a pre-tack ball, how to increase the right substance.
Doesn't Japan have a pre-tack ball? I apologize. Doesn't Japan have a pre-tacked ball now?
They do. It might be Korea. It's one of them. It's either Korea or Japan. They definitely have a pre-tack ball. The thing is, though, you may find that even with a pre-tack ball, with experimentation, you might find that adding spider tack on my fingers with pre-tack ball increases my spin rate. The incentives are there for the pitchers to learn how to do that. Higher spin rates means more missed bats, means more weak contact, and that's good for pitchers. So I think that's going to continue. I hope I'm getting to all the questions. Ryan says there shouldn't be different baseballs, but there is now. I think that's what Ryan meant. Yeah, I suspect going forward, they really should only have one baseball per season. And that's a great question by Adam. How do we, after they negotiate the pre-tacked balls being there or not, how does that work? How does that look? How do you introduce those? And it probably couldn't happen right away. I mean, I don't know manufacturing well enough to see that. And I don't know about AAA. That's a good question, whether in AAA they had pre-tacked balls at the very end. Maybe they did.
Why would they want pre-tacked balls? Wouldn't they rather have the absence of tack because it would increase hitting?
I think absence of tack would increase hitting, but there was this tacit understanding of letting the pitchers put substances on the ball. I don't know exactly why, but the pitchers kept saying, I can control my pitches better. They can, they would have less hit batters. Someone should do a study of that. I am not sure of that at all, but that's what pitchers claim, is that the tack helps them throw in the strike zone. I'm having a harder time hearing that.
We didn't hear that.
Okay, so Adam asks about why did the Dodgers... I'm sorry, I missed that again. Okay, so Adam asks about the Dodgers. If they're smart, why do they sign him? Well, he did pretty well for them until he had outside circumstances disrupt his season. He was pitching pretty well. So it was probably a smart signing until everyone realized his bad behaviors. That's a good question from Seamus about the rubbing of the baseballs. Wide open. If they go to attack your ball, I don't think there's a reason to use the Jersey mud anymore for that. I'm sorry. There's someone I think trying to ask a question. I just can't hear it.
Yes, someone is not muted and they're causing some interference.
Oh, maybe I'm just hearing background noise, right? And they're not trying to ask a question. Got it. That could be it. So Evan mentions hit by pitch is up. MLB Network says that.
Well, what I remember from the conversations that were going on during this whole thing was that pitchers were claiming that they need to do it to manage their control. And I don't remember which host it was or which person said it, but they looked at the statistics and it's just not the case. Hit by pitch is an upward trend. So maybe that could be part of your next study, Andy.
Well, hit by pitch is only one thing, right? What you really need to know is, and this is studyable, believe it or not, the teams do a really good job of this. In the public, only a few people are doing it. But you can sort of look, if you do the right thing with video analytics, you can see where the catcher is set up and you can measure how much the pitch misses from the catcher setup. That's really the best measure of how poorly the pitcher is hitting their spot. Not hit by pitch. Hit by pitch is like a degree or two removed from measuring control. If you're claiming Tacky gets better control, command of my pitches, then that's what you have to measure. You've got to measure the ability to hit the glove, right? I mean, that's really what you want to go for. But the bottom line is I'm skeptical of the claim that pine tar use in the last 40 years has been for just controlling your command as a pitcher. I think it needs to be studied more. People make the claim all the time, and I'm just not sure about it. I'm skeptical. I'd like to get the data more on that. It's a good study, though. You're right, Evan. It should be that would be a good study. Oh, good. Another input from Bruce around testing a machine with the mud on the ball. Very good. And then Justin with a good question too. Does the mud always become dusty when it dries? No, it's this strange, weird mud that just discolors it a little bit, but changes something about the feel of the baseball. And umpires have been rubbing mud on baseballs, and the mud comes from the swamps of, not the swamps of Jersey. It's actually the Delaware River Valley somewhere. And that's where the mud comes from. Seamus probably knows exactly where, but that's the mud used all over baseball to rub them pregame. Very good observation about Austin Adams. That was a great data set last year of Austin Adams. He does have a huge hit by pitch problem. Okay. Yeah, Rancocas, New Jersey. Okay. Yeah. There is an echo, and I'm just if everyone could mute, that might help. That might help it. So that's, to me, that's an interesting story from last year, is spin rates. And then, of course, this offseason, we've heard a lot more about the baseball from Meredith Wills and MLB. Various people have done studies. There's one guy he's a blogger and he's a amateur sabermetrician. He just does his own analytics on the side. He's written that the Yankees were deliberately targeted for the low flight balls. And that's why DJ LeMahieu had such a poor season at Yankee Stadium. He actually claims it. He tries to show the data that this is obvious. And then there's other articles out there about the potential impact of the two baseballs. The problem is we just don't know where they were to do the definitive test. It's very similar to the steroids era. We're not really sure who was on steroids and who wasn't. We know a few people that got caught and admitted it. But do you know the percentage of folks who were taking anabolic steroids 20 years ago when the rules started changing? I don't think anybody does. I don't think that thing that they did preseason was super reliable. In 2003 or 2, whenever they did that test. The big point is, just like we don't know who took steroids, we don't know where the baseballs were in the season last year. So it's going to be a hard study to try to figure that out. It's just very interesting that is part of what baseball is dealing with this year is this issue. So the other thing I want to brag about, if you allow me, I've had the privilege of teaching at I've been teaching lots of places, but I had a bunch of two friends and I decided to design a course in baseball analytics to teach baseball analytics at Tufts. And the first year was 2004. And our first guest speaker was the GM of the Red Sox, Brian O'Halloran. He came and talked to us in 2004. And that was a great year. And a student from that class was just named the general manager of the Tampa Bay Rays. So I get to claim credit for everything that the general manager of the Rays knows, because it all came from my class and me. It's all me. So I'm kidding. Of course, but I do. But Pete Bendix did get named GM of the Tampa Bay Rays. It's my first student that was named general manager. We had a quiet pool going on the side, like who's going to be the first one. And Pete was named general manager of the Rays, and the Rays are a great analytics organization. If I don't care where you stand on the spectrum of analytics are really good for the game or really bad for the game, that's a full spectrum that there's fans in every part of that spectrum. But I will tell you this, Pete and the Rays are doing a great job with analytics. They really know what they're doing. And it's been great to talk with Pete, consult with Pete, hear from Pete, just what the Rays do. Another student of mine went with the Rays, but now he's with the Dodgers. So it was just great to hear that. So that's my little moment of bragging. We have a general manager. I hope it's not the last one. We have 3 or 4 more who are really in the conversation in the years to come for future general managers. So anyway, chat. There's more questions in the chat. Mark asks. This is a great question, by the way. I think it's Mark by the way I'm reading this. The bottom line for me is, can we get to a point where there's more batted balls in fair territory in the future? I would add, I like home runs too. I don't mind if they go over the fence. The point is, the increase in batted balls would be great for a lot of folks. The subtleties of great pitching are not lost on me. I love great pitching. I love games I would love to go to a game where there's 2 no-hitters going into the 9th inning for both teams. That would be thrilling for me. And that's no balls in play. But I certainly understand that my son and his friends don't like games like that at all. They're baseball players. They all played baseball. They love the game in that way. But they all just sort of shake their head at the idea that it's all just a pitching game without action, without other action of balls in play, like Mark is talking about. So I agree with Mark. I think for the health of the game, we have to start considering how to change the rules for balls in play. I think that would be great if we could get more balls in play. That's just my view, even though, like I said, I like baseball, however it ends up. I like baseball if it's 1-0 game and it's tension filled for that reason. I like baseball pitch by pitch. I like seeing the strategy of every pitch. I like seeing the strategy of the managers deciding how to do matchups, how the pitcher, catcher, pitching coach decide to do sequencing, how they decide to sequence the pitches for the best advantage. To me, that's fascinating. But I'm on one extreme. I get it. I'm an old guy who really likes watching baseball in any form and really like the analytics behind it, driving decision-making in the game. But again, I understand where I sit. I'm not the normal fan. The normal fan likes balls in play, and I get it. I totally get that we should have more balls in play.
Andy, Seamus asked a question which was on my mind too, is do you have other things that you want to present as opposed to answering questions that are in the chat? Because
yeah,
an awful lot of slides on the bar to the left of my screen here. You're not going to go through them all, I'm sure.
One of the things I wanted to show, I started this talk. If you haven't seen the TED Talk, I start with a little history. There's a lot of historians here probably, so maybe that's worthwhile doing. What I show here, that's a great question, Seamus. Thanks for asking. This is just run scoring. This is runs per game over, at the beginning of the modern era of baseball, 1901. And I just graph it to 2010 here to make a point about the dead ball era. The dead ball era, everyone thinks is a dead ball era, and it was a dead ball era. They did improve the springiness of the two years. You see where it goes to 4.5 around 1913, 14, or 12 or 13. I forget what it is, but there's 2 years that are sort of the outlier in this little curve of the dead ball run scoring era. That's a place where they admitted that they changed the baseball. Okay. But then soon after that is where pitchers learned to do the emery ball, the shine ball, the spit ball. And but it wasn't illegal. No, there were no rules against it. Pitchers learned to scuff the ball. The ball was they hardly replaced any baseballs in that day either, those days. Only when they couldn't retrieve it. But they always tried to reuse the baseballs. Not like ball goes in the dirt today, they throw it out. Okay. Now, back then, the ball was used until, they couldn't find it, and then they would get a new one. But the balls were dead mostly because they got mashed. They got mashed by hitting the bat. If you kept a ball in play with 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 actual bat ball contact events, that baseball gets pretty mushy, and that's really a big effect here. They didn't start swapping out baseballs until Ray Chapman dies. Once Ray Chapman dies on the field, and he couldn't see it by all accounts, like he just couldn't see the ball. He didn't move from all accounts. I mean, I wasn't there, but I've read about it, and he couldn't see the ball either because of the background wasn't there, and no contrast, or the ball wasn't wide enough, and he got hit in the head, and he died on the field. After that, they decided, we'll swap out the baseballs. And that had probably a big effect on the live ball era. Run scoring went up because you played now with not the mushy ball anymore. The other thing, though, is in 1920 is when they made it illegal to do all these freak pitches. So that era between the change in the baseball and 1920, where you see a dip in run scoring, okay, that's free reign of pitchers doctoring and putting foreign substances on the baseball. Free reign, no regulation, do whatever you want, no rules on the books. Then they changed the rule. Okay, then, so that's this next live ball era slide I have. And one of the things I show here is that Ty Cobb this is his quote: freak pitches, all these pitches that were pitchers were throwing to try to deceive hitters, were outlawed when the owners greedily sold out to home runs. Now, Ty Cobb had an axe to grind here. He was a hitter. He was a line drive hitter, his home run rate wasn't as great as Babe Ruth's. Babe Ruth became famous, and Ty Cobb was just less famous, and Ty Cobb might have been, salty about that. But his observation makes sense, because it looked like part of the shift in the rules of getting rid of the freak pitches, the trick pitches, the spitballs, shine balls, emery balls, was to increase offense. This was a shift, just like we saw in 2021, where they changed the rule to make run scoring go up. And it did go up. But then there's another alternate effect that people think the baseball changed again. Maybe it did. Hard to tell, hard to know. No one knows for sure how much the baseball actually changed for its coefficient of restitution, its ability to fly farther, faster. But the rules did change around this, the foreign substances. In 1920, what they said was, we're going to grandfather in everybody who already pitched a freak pitch. She had to sort of raise your hand and say, I pitch a shine ball, I pitch a spitball. And you were grandfathered in and allowed to do it for your career. The last time somebody pitched in Major League Baseball using a freak pitch, well, I think it was 1933. So from 34 on, nobody was allowed to do any freak pitches. And I think that had a lot to do with the increase in run scoring. The increase in run scoring we see in the live ball era. Okay, so let me quickly go back to see if I've missed anything. Yeah, Bruce is with Mark and with me. We need more balls in play, more fielders involved. I think that's true. Adam goes on a limb. Nice, Adam. The Cy Young Award winner this year is going to be Corey Kluber, but check his spin rate. Okay. Yeah, Mark, fair enough. I knew you'd like home runs, but I think the way you worded it was fair territory. Is a home run fair territory? I guess it is, isn't it? Is that right? If it goes over the fence, that's fair?
It has to be.
Okay, okay. All right.
It can't be foul.
But is it fair? I'm still
It
asking.
has to be.
Okay. So Seamus asked get back to the data presentation. Good. Adam Adam would like the Red Sox to make Nesson more readily available. Very nice, Adam. I agree. Seamus says it's also correlated with court cases that allow fans to keep foul balls in the stands. Oh, you mean the ball and play problem in the dead ball era? Is that what you're referring to?
No. At around 1920, 21, 22, there were several court cases that said you did not have to return the ball to the field. You could keep it. And that forced the teams to put another ball in play.
So it wasn't a decision after Ray Chapman to replace baseballs?
It was a perfect storm of things that happened right at that same time. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, good.
World War I was over and the patriotic recycling of baseballs also diminished.
Well, this is a nice graphic. Does anyone want to see like some? This is a nice video to show some physics of the baseball spinning and why it moves in air. Does anyone want to have a physics tutorial? Just raise your hand so I can see it on the screen.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, we have some amateur physicists here. I love it. So let me see if I can let this video run, if that works. And I think it's going to be able to, yeah, let's see. I'm not sure. Let me see if I'll just do is this, hopefully I'm not screwing it up. Hopefully you can see. Okay. You guys see the motion now on your screens?
For a moment, we saw some rotation of the ball.
I think it's because I went to full screen. So let me do that. I lost my PowerPoint, so we're going to do this. Okay, let's do this. What this is trying to show is that when molecules go on the top of a spinning baseball like that, when they're flowing through air, they actually get dragged by the ball and they actually move faster. But when the air goes on the bottom, it goes slower. Let me try to go back and show that again. When the molecules go on the bottom of the baseball, and it's a difference between the spin direction, let me show that again, they actually go slower, okay? So the slower molecules have a higher pressure, okay, associated with them than the lower pressure. The lower pressure is higher velocity of the molecules, and it turns out to be a lower pressure, just because of the velocity of the molecules over the baseball. And underneath, it's a higher pressure because of the slower velocity of the molecules passing the baseball. And this is called the Magnus Effect. This is studied in, spinning spheres through a fluid, and the air is a fluid, and the spinning sphere of the baseball is like any spinning sphere. This kind of pressure difference is exactly like an airfoil. The reason an airplane that weighs tons and tons and tons can take off the ground is because on the wing itself, there's this pressure difference, just like you see out around the baseball. It's a much bigger pressure difference on the airfoil, allowing the pressure difference to lift the plane off the ground, okay? But this is enough pressure difference to have the ball actually go against normal, go against the normal break you'd expect. So the spin itself is leading to a pressure difference, this higher and lower pressure, causing it to, in this case, go up a little bit from what would be normal. There'd be a pressure pushing up and the ball would actually rise in this case. Now this graphic was done by some friends at BU, and I use it all the time now when I'm explaining this. And we did this for a little news article we did at BU, and I used it again in this little TED talk. But it really is a great visual of how you can think about the different velocity of the molecules around the baseball being different. And those velocity differences is exactly translated into force, into pressure. Okay, the velocity difference is a pressure difference. The pressure difference is a force causing the ball to go upward, just like it causes the airfoil and the airplane to go upward. And in the case of the Bernoulli, it's called the Bernoulli effect in that case. Another case of, I might be jogging some of your ancient physics courses by reviewing all this, but that's the basic physics. It turns out when you really do the physics.
Could you say that again? Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Siri is talking back to me. I said sorry, and sorry thought I meant Siri. Siri, it's not you, it's sorry. Yeah, I don't know how to turn my phone off easily. I'll leave Siri alone. But it turns out there's different forces too. When you do the real physics of this, a lot of this is something called wake deflection that has to do with the seams. The seams on the ball cause another set of forces, and there's different names for it, but wake deflection is what the physicists use. It's because of the shape of the seams and the air going over the seams causing turbulence changes that leads to a wake deflection force. And this is the knuckleball story. The knuckleball is supposedly a pitch that doesn't spin. So how do you get it to break if it doesn't spin, if it's just floating? Well, that is wake deflection. That's how the air flows over the seams. One of the reasons you see a thrown knuckleball kind of look like it's moving right and then look like it's moving left and right again is because as the ball is tumbling, it can't be, if you ever watch a slow motion of a knuckleball, which I should maybe bring up, you can see how it's moving just a little bit. It's not got a very high RPM, it's a very low RPM. And then the fluid around the knuckleball, the airflow around the knuckleball is impacted by the seams. So you're going to see funky movement. I could probably do this quickly. I don't know how to do this fast and keep talking, but one of the things that's great to look at is you can see this pitch here. This is like the four-seam fastball, and you can look at different sources to see how much it breaks beyond normal, how much it actually rises. And this is a key feature of understanding pitching, is the understanding the break of the baseball that could be measured with all this new technology, Pitch FX, Hawkeye, all those things, and putting it out there on StatCast. But that measuring the break is pretty straightforward on a four-seam fastball, a curveball, a slider. It's harder to measure on a knuckleball because you can sort of see the beginning and ending point, but the ball actually has a trajectory that's not a normal, predictable trajectory like the four-seam fastball. And so it's a little harder to envision how spin rate is going to impact the flight of the pitch on a knuckleball. You really don't know because the orientation can vary so much of the baseball itself. You can see, you can sort of see it. I don't know if you can see the seams on my screen, but any orientation is going to impact airflow and impact the wake deflection and move the ball in any of 360 degrees. There's a set sort of angle where you're going to deliver your four-seam fastball. It's going to deliver a certain way, but the knuckleball, if thrown well, could be going anywhere. And when you look at Tim Wakefield and you look at other knuckleballers and how their pitches break, it's like it looks like a shotgun pattern. It just goes everywhere, okay? Because they don't really know where it goes. But when you look at, say, where John Lester's four-seam fastball goes, it's going to a very safe space because he's throwing it very consistently. Here's another graphic I like to show. Very similar thing. This is sort of the line here. The yellow line is to represent what the trajectory would be without spin. But then we're trying to show with this image how the ball actually rises over what you'd expect with a ball that doesn't rise, okay? And a lot of fans here might remember Daisuke Matsuzaka, okay? He was a Red Sox player of very high regard when he was signed. There was lots of excitement when he signed here. And there's great YouTube video of Daisuke throwing a funky slider that he called a gyro ball. He called it a gyro ball. And a gyro, see, I don't know, I'm trying to get the light right here. Maybe you can sort of see, this is, if I throw this ball this way to the catcher, on a four-seam fastball, it's going to spin like this. Can you see the seams on my screen? Let me stop sharing. I'll show. This will be better.
Yep.
Yeah. So if I'm throwing a four-seam fastball into the camera, this is how a ball is going to spin, right? What Daisuke was trying to do was throw a slider. So he's throwing his slider. He's throwing his slider like this. But what he wanted to do was have it spin like this, like a bullet, okay? In physics, they call that the bullet spin because the perfect bullet spin is one that's going to go right where you're aiming it, okay? That's why they create firearms to create bullet spins with bullets so that you can really, really aim accurately. But the bullet spin goes like this. Is that something you can see? I don't know where the right contrast is. I have to hold the ball like this because he's throwing it like this. He's throwing a slider like this, and he wants a bullet spin. And there's great YouTube videos of him doing it. And some pitchers, yeah.
Andy, if you ask people to put it on speaker mode, they would see the spin better because your picture comes up bigger.
Excellent. Try that, everyone. Go up to the upper right corner to the view button. Go to speaker. That might help if you want to see this. So again, this is if the camera's the catcher, I'm throwing it to the catcher this way, and as I release it, it's spinning this way. Okay, that's how it's spinning. But if I'm Daisuke throwing the gyro ball, I'm throwing my slider, which is this. How do I do this well? He's throwing it like this. You're trying to impart spin on the ball like this. Now there's different slider grips. People throw lots of different sliders versus curveballs. But the gyro ball, which is what Daisuke talked about, is trying to throw the bullet spin. A bullet spin is effective because it's not many pitchers throw the bullet spin. So it actually is a very effective pitch because, you know, batters are kind of tuned to a certain kind of decision they make on a curveball, slider, but a bullet spin is hard. If you just see a bullet, if you just see the ball go straight like it's supposed to, you'd actually miss it. In the beginning, you'd have to figure out how to hit that better. One of the things batters do really well, this is like a super skill. This is like a you know, Spider-Man skill or something. It's superpower, is their ability to adjust. I played a little baseball here and there, and the adjustments I can make is nothing like, you know, what these crazy talented hitters do. And their ability to say, okay, Ottavino's coming up. He's got, I'm going to be able to pick up his two-seamer versus his slider, which is already a superpower in and of itself. But their ability to say if Ottavino's slider does this, and they can adjust, it's kind of bananas how they can figure all this stuff out. It's super skill, it's an amazing skill. And one of the things people always can't understand, you know, a lot of people who play baseball think like, oh, I can hit it hard, but no one, you don't have any idea of the physiology of these great hitters that make the major leagues and perform well, like your Juan Sotos and your, you know, Rafael Devers, who hits it hard. You know, it's amazing how they do it. It's actually incredible. So anyway, the bullet spin like this is actually a very effective pitch. Google Daisuke Matsuzaka Gyro Ball to see it. It's kind of cool. So back. Any other questions on this? Oh yeah, the gyro ball. The guy who throws a gyro ball by Statcast is a guy from Cincinnati, big tall guy, lefty. Amir Garrett. Amir Garrett's got a gyro ball because if the ball just, you know, his slider goes doink right to XY00, which means it's a bullet spin. Adam Ottavino, in contrast, and others have these wipeout sliders, these frisbee sliders that go shoot way off to his glove side, the pitcher's glove side. And those are super effective too. Those frisbee sliders, evidenced by great years by Adam Ottavino.
Wow.
So, okay. Adam asks, which pitcher do I enjoy watching the most? My favorite pitcher to watch was Pedro Martinez in '99 and 2000. That was bananas. It was just bananas to watch him those 2 years. And it was a destination event in my book. He was pitching, I had to go. I was like, oh my God, I want to watch this. Because he was so fast. And he had 5 pitches that he could command. And these other pitches, he changed his arm slot sometimes just to screw with people. It was like watching a magician, at least in my book. And so that was my favorite. Today, who's my favorite today? I'm going to give that some more thought. There's so many great pitchers today. I didn't want to say Trevor Bauer because he's an objectionable character, but just watching him pitch is a treat. There's something very analytically satisfying with watching him pitch. I'll get to Justin's question in a second. I do want to show, let's see if I can do this. Share screen again. I want to show some other data, these great experiments that have been done with changing spin rates. So this is data which is interesting. What they did is they took collegiate and semi-professional batters in Japan. Like these are expert batters. And what they did was they had the pitching machine pitch at the same velocities. So the batter can tune in to the right velocity. But what they didn't tell the batter was that the spin rates would vary. So they would vary the spin rates on these pitches, but the velocity was always the same. So the batter is kind of tuned into a certain velocity, because that's what batters do. You kind of tune into the right velocity. But what this data show here, the blue, the yellow, and the red, is that the spin, the batter is tuned into a certain sort of thing, okay? Like 30 revolutions per second, okay? And that's a pretty normal fastball, okay, that kind of spin. 40 is hard to do. 40 is a really high spinning pitch. And I don't think any humans can do 50 RPS. Okay, it's just not a thing humans can do yet. Maybe with really super duper sticky stuff or something. But right now, but the experiment shows that when you take the bat path and you reconstruct the bat path in X and Y here, and you see that on the photograph, you can see how they're reconstructing X and Y, and they make it translated into the image, which is the graph with all the yellow, red, and blue dots. When you see how batters swing at these pitches, they miss the high spinning pitches, or they mishit them. So this is just evidence, experimental evidence, showing spin changes batter performance. It really does. Batters, you just change the spin on them, everything's tuned the same, they would miss pitches. And they couldn't pick spin up. No batter can pick spin up. Enough batter, if you bat enough, you can obviously pick speed up. I think there's ways to tune into speed as a batter. Like if you get used to it, you certainly can. There's ways to sort of pick out a certain trajectory that looks like fastball versus, maybe you could see the trajectory of the curveball being higher. These are things batters can recognize. They can see maybe red dots associated with sliders, depending on the grip and everything the pitcher's doing. So they'd have some clues of what pitch is being pitched, but spin is not something they can pick up. The eye can't pick up the spin of the baseball, unless it's maybe a knuckleball, but not in these ranges of spin. There's no way for the batter to tell the different spin rates. Higher spin causes missed bats, miss hits, okay? You don't hit it as well if you have a higher spin rate. You're thinking a normal pitch coming in like a four-seam fastball. You go, okay, here's the four-seam fastball, I'm gonna crush it. Ooh, whoa, I missed, okay? And this is one of those things batters used to call hop. You ever hear this before? Wow, that guy's got hop. What that means is, translating that is, the spin was so high, the ball looked like it's hopping at the very end over my bat. That's what a batter would say. They go like, how the hell did I miss that? I was on that pitch. Wow, Clemens has hop. What it means is Clemens has very high spin rates relative to what the brain was patterned in the batter. But this is the data that show that, okay? The reds are the misses. The higher spin rate, they couldn't see it. Another graph showing summary of this is this one here. This is sort of a summary of all the different spin rates and the XY axis on the bat again. If it was a lower spin rate and a 30, which is normal spin rate, the average place on the contact on the bat was much more in the sweet spot. But as soon as you got to these higher spin rates, and that the little gray rectangle is the trying to represent the sweet spot of the bat. Good place to be if you're a hitter, not a good place to be if you're a pitcher. But you could see the higher spin rates, you miss the sweet spot, okay? And this is an experiment. This isn't, this is done in a lab, measuring these things precisely. And so you can see spin rate affects bat ball impact. It's very important knowledge around why spinning matters, spinning baseballs matter. This graphic here, this image, this GIF here is our old friend swinging under a pitch. And he went back to the dugout and said, man, that guy's got hop. Or maybe if he did that every at bat, like happened a lot, he might say, he might stop saying it after a while because he missed a lot of bats. He missed a lot of balls that way. Where did he get traded? I forgot already. Pittsburgh? Where did Dahlbeck end up? Not Dahlbeck. Where did I'm forgotten his name already.
Right fielder?
Where did he go?
Was he the right fielder?
He played outfield. Yeah.
I
I
forget his
believe
name
I've
too.
forgotten his name. Old age. No, really. He was traded last year in the mid-year at the trade deadline by the Red Sox to somebody.
Michael.
Chavis, of course. Michael Chavis. Thank you. Second base. He played outfield too. He was in the outfield. Bill and I went back and forth on the last game of the year in 2020, where the fan climbed up into the camera well in center field. Does anyone know this story? It was kind of a crazy story. But Chavis was in left field, I think, when that happened.
Yeah, the guy was up on the camera well, or whatever it's called, platform in center field. And he was yelling down at Chavis, who was wearing number 23. He was yelling, "You're number 23, but you're no Michael Jordan." The story will show up on Games Project in the next few weeks at some point. I wrote it up.
Oh, good.
Got the police report from the Boston Police Department on the incident. The guy never went to jail or anything. He went to a hospital for observation.
Well,
And
in our
Andy
dis-
noticed that he was wearing an Ellen Webster jersey, which
Yeah,
we
I
thought
had
was
my-
rather clever because it wasn't as though there were a large number of Ellen Webster jerseys on sale in Twins.
well, we were toying with announcing. We always announce that year attendance 0 for
Yeah.
my little job, scorekeeping job at Fenway. We'd always, that announcement would be made. And that year I was making the announcements instead of the official score. And someone from New York said, "You should say attendance 1." Official attendance 1. There were no fans that year, if you remember. Thank you for telling me that Chavis went to the Pirates. Very good. So
We have hit the 1 hour point.
okay, well,
We don't have to leave.
I am going to stop share so that I can see all your faces and names. Why don't we do a Q&A where you, if you're okay, unmute and ask a question. We've lost Seamus. Oh, that's too bad. That's a great
Feeding my-
bookshelf, Seamus.
There's his chair.
I'm feeding my cat.
Oh,
Okay.
Very demanding cat, apparently.
apparently.
Well,
So how's the Rob Manfred fan club feeling tonight?
well, interesting. I thought he was going to announce today a delay in games for spring
Not
training,
yet.
but he didn't. So
No, they announced a couple of moves, the abolition of the designated hitter, for instance.
well, Manfred's under the gun from a lot of fans, but I'm sure there's a lot of fans who, like the stance the owners are taking too. So it's a mixed bag.
They had to wait till Saturday so they could
Yeah.
blame the players for the delay of spring training after they made a offer on Saturday, the owners.
Bill, did I hear you right that the Manfred banned the designated hitter?
That's what it said in the paper today.
He banned it.
Not banned it, but the sides have agreed to dispense with it.
Wow.
That's what it said.
The opposite.
Not
of that,
agreement.
a universal DH,
Yep.
not banning.
That will improve
Also,
a little more bat
they've
contact.
also eliminated draft pick compensation for signing
Yes.
free agents.
That was the other one. Yeah.
Well, that'll help sign more free agents. One of the things that analytics has definitely shown is the value of your draft picks. The current structure is tilted so much towards having those 6 years of control at a fairly low salary, especially for 3 of those years. It's the hitting on a draft pick, like Mookie Betts in the second round, was so important to the value, the win value for the Red Sox. So all these young players are going to be so valuable if they are able to come to the major leagues and perform well. So, you know, hopefully they can start paying the players in the first 6 years a better salary, but it's, you know, the owners like it the way it is. They like the idea of low salaries for all these great performers. But that's what everyone's realized because of this is the value of even the Mookie Betts second round pick, or the, you know, the diamond in the rough third or fourth or fifth round pick that can become an all-star. Most of the all-stars come from foreign signings, which is different, or the first few picks. You know, first 20 picks is kind of the goal. You know, that's where most of this stuff comes from, especially the first 5 picks. I mean, these people are generally pretty well scouted now. So having, you know, the Red Sox did well. This is the Boston SABR, you know, group. Marcelo Meyer was a huge signing for the Red Sox. That's because they had the 4th pick. So they had the 4th pick, meaning you're going to get somebody good. That's going to be so valuable for the Red Sox. This guy looks legit. Okay, he really does. Now, no one knows the future. You know, his probability of being an all-star is still today probably 50-50. But it's 50%. The guy has a shot by his talent level to maybe be that good. So that 4th pick was huge. Picking 4th was massive. The Yankees didn't have 4th pick. Seamus, your
Andy,
hand up.
yeah, Andy, you gave the data on the 4-seam fastball, but it became pretty apparent to me during the October playoffs that so many batters were getting fooled by a pitch that dropped, and dropped sometimes in the dirt, even that the catcher had trouble picking it up. Tell me again what that pitch is. Is that a sinker or is that a slider?
Depends on who the pitcher is, right? You know, one of the best strategies you can have as a pitcher is to be north, south, or east, west. And what I mean is, this is why some people are so effective. Like you have a good relief pitcher that's got a very high speed, 4-seam fastball or a 2-seam fastball, but it rises because it's so fast. Then they've got the hammer curve. So the ball comes in, hit or eye, then it goes north-south. Okay, now it's not exactly hit or eye, it's not exactly tunneling exactly the same, but if you can do that north-south, you can be extremely effective. Remember Uehara? Remember this guy Uehara for the Red Sox? His fastball was 88 miles an hour. That is not a major league fastball, but just by velocity. It was well below average. But he was so effective. He had a huge strikeout rate. And he had a huge strikeout rate because here's the other pitch that does this, is the splitter, okay? So where's my baseball? So you had the 4-seam fastball, but the splitter is like a weird changeup. Everything looks exactly like the 4-seam fastball, except it's a lower spin rate and it just tumbles down. So if you could have the 4-seam and the splitter trajectory coming through at the same period, batters going like, it looks like a four seam, and then it just doinks down, they're going to swing over it all the time. Or you're going to be like, oh my God, Uehara always gets me out on the splitter. I got to guess. The guy with the splitter these days is like Otani. Otani's got this amazing splitter, right? And that people are all over it all the time because it tunnels and looks the same, and then it goes north-south. Even Uehara's weaker 88-mile-an-hour fastball still went north, but his splitter went south. So a lot of times you'll see splitters hit the dirt, curveballs hit the dirt. Some people will throw sliders. Their slider break might be a downward break a little bit. So it depends on the pitcher. It is very effective though. If it looks, always think Uehara, Seamus. Uehara had a weaker fastball, but people couldn't hit it because they're guessing splitter, right? Or they're guessing fastball, and they're so confused. They're like, I don't know what it is. They couldn't track it in the beginning, and it would do one thing or the other, up or down. And that is super effective. So a guy with an 88-mile-an-hour fastball had a huge strikeout rate because he had great tunneling, and batters couldn't guess. So that's one way. That's one way you can do very effective north-south. A guy like there's a lot of pitchers though with sort of these hammer curves, deliberately throwing it in the dirt, but never to the guy from the Yankees, that poor catcher, Sanchez. That guy can't block. He can't block pitches at the rate needed to be able to get balls in the dirt all the time. Because it's a strategy now to throw it in the dirt. It actually is, but you have to have a good catcher, right, to be able to do it. So strategically, this is one of the things people have learned in the pitch FX era is this ability of, having balls way off the strike zone like that. But sometimes it's a slider. So a lot of times it's a splitter. A lot of times it's a curveball. Does that make sense, Seamus?
Thanks. That's exactly it. Do you have any data on that is similar to the spin rate? I mean, does the spin rate matter in those pitches?
Spin rates aren't as important in the off-speed stuff, change-ups, splitters. Okay, spin doesn't matter as much there. In other words, sticky stuff won't matter much there.
Thanks.
Because you don't want this higher and lower spin rates. It's all about just that break that looks so different than what you're expecting. That makes it effective. So off speed, if you're really an off speed pitcher, a junk pitcher all the time, curve, split, curve, change, you may not benefit as much as a four seam fastball to have the sticky stuff. Curveballs help, right? If you can spin it more on a curve, you can break it more on a curve, that's good, okay? But the off-speed stuff, it may not be as important to have stickier fingers. Four seam, two seam, cutter, these fastballs, it seems to make a difference. Curves, it's probably important. Sliders might be important too, depending on your type of slider. There's just such a range of deliveries. I mean, the four seam delivery is very common and it's the highest thrown pitch. The two seam is really changing the seams a bit, but all you're doing mostly in the two seam is emphasizing your index finger. You're really throwing it. Is Evan here? My buddy Evan? Anyway, I don't know what Evan throws. I've played behind Evan, but I don't know all his pitches. But if you throwing your two seam, you're really emphasizing this side of the baseball. Just like when you throw the cutter, you're emphasizing this side of the baseball with a fastball motion and mostly fastball grip. So the grips are so variable on all different parts of the baseball. You have your nice horseshoe, you've got your part where it's closer. Pitchers play with this all the time and they learn the most effective way. So sometimes their sliders are a little bit more curvier sliders. Sometimes this is the curveball motion. The hammer curve, 12-6 curve is this one, right? So you're spinning it this way. That's a very different grip and motion than, say, the slider, which is kind of this way. You're trying to spin it this way. So you can imagine there's sliders, and then there's curves, and there's everything in between. There really is. And pitchers have all these different grips doing all these different things. And they all play with their grip when they're training and throwing. And they, believe it or not, everyone's trying to knuckleball too. They're all just screwing around with the knuckleball just to screw with it. Like, hey, can I throw one? And it's unbelievable how when infielders and outfielders are just warming up and throwing, they're always throwing knuckleballs. And that's how a guy like Wakefield, I think, actually found a second career. He started out as a first baseman,
Right.
but he started screwing around, throwing a knuckleball, and people are like, dude, that's good. And he kept trying it, and eventually he went through the minors, back up to the majors, throwing a knuckleball. I think it's not just him, others have done it, but it's because people are, people, when they're tossing the baseball, they're always screwing around with different things. If they're trying to be a pitcher, they're in with their coaches and their other pitchers, just playing around with grips and seeing what happens and seeing how it moves. And now that they have tech behind them, radar measuring their workouts, it's even better. This group was privileged. Remember that meeting we had at Fenway Park with Craig Breslow? You guys remember that?
Yeah.
Yes.
So that meeting, he was the first guy to say, yeah, I bought my own Rapsodo and I trained to it. Do you remember all that?
Yes.
I remember. He said, and he was one of the early adopters of getting the radar behind him so I can train and see what I'm doing with each pitch and each grip and each arm slot. He was an empiricist that way. He obviously is still one of the brightest baseball players, but he did it experimentally, which is what Trevor Bauer has done with the sticky stuff. Okay. I'm not sure Craig Breslow has ever used sticky stuff. I'm not saying that at all, but what he did first, the first I heard of it, I was like, that's such a great idea. He bought a Rapsodo when they were just sort of out, and he trained to it. And he told us this at Fenway.
Yep.
That when he spoke to us. I missed some of Justin's questions. Justin points out that a lot of pitchers have moved to a two-seam fastball. And this is really, I think this fits under the category of what Pitch FX and Hawkeye have done, okay, and StatCast when we finally got the whole field because of full measures of ball flight. The analysts got a really good sense of what works as a pitcher. And the other thing that happened too was the ability to say, yeah, I'm a pitcher, I've made the major leagues, I've got 4 different pitches. But the analyst, the nerd in the basement, could come to the pitcher, maybe not that guy, but somebody says to the pitcher, your best pitch, when we look at all the data, is when you throw that two-seamer, low and inside. That's better knowledge than when you're just trying to hum the 4-seamer high in the strike zone. It just works better on all these batters if you focus on the 2-seamer. That kind of knowledge of a within pitcher effectiveness of pitch type is a huge advantage to the pitchers. It was a huge advantage in understanding pitching and having pitchers perform better. My anecdote is the world went up in flames and burned Kevin Cash in effigy because he took out Blake Snell in the World Series facing Mookie Betts. Okay. And Dave Roberts of Dodgers has been blown up 1,000 times for his pitching decisions in the World Series. I never blew up either person because I know for a fact they're 100 times smarter than I am about what works with that batter, about what works with that pitcher. They know these things unbelievably well. And they're using this information to try to win the game. Now, does it work out all the time? Heck no. You know, that Blake Snell move, Mookie hits a double, I think, or something, and everything changes. Okay. Those things happen too, right? So in retrospect, there's a lot of decisions that you'd say, oh my God, Dave Roberts, why did you do that? Well, Dave Roberts did it because the data kind of indicated that was the right percentage move. And unfortunately, it drives fans bonkers, but Dave Roberts would do it again, even though he's got to face the media and they're going to jam him up for it. And he's got to keep his cool and be calm and say, yeah, all the right things. Yeah, that move didn't work out. I'm sorry. He would still do it if he's smart, because the probabilities are lined up with his decision. Now, this is one of those things that I'm saying now that drives fans crazy who think analytics aren't necessarily the right thing for the game. I understand it. I get it. And I don't mean to turn you off to these things, but I do want to say that it's not going anywhere, unfortunately, for fans who don't like these data-driven decisions, but they're here to stay in baseball. And the Rockies may someday even catch up. Oh, that was bad. Are you a Rockies fan anywhere? Sorry, Rockies fans. You're not recording, right? Right, Bill? You're not recording, right?
Oh, no, we wouldn't record this.
No, the Rockies are getting better and better. Sorry, Father. You have a question?
Andy, yeah, thanks so much for your presentation. So I'll be teaching my sabermetrics course at Providence College again in the fall, and
Good.
It looks like I'm going to have some students working as interns on the Cape this summer. And so my question is, what advice would you give to some students of mine who would be interested in pursuing a career in analytics, possibly to the major leagues? I mean, I'm nowhere near the point where I could have a general manager in my class just yet, but you never know.
Oh, maybe someday for you too.
Yeah, it's a long-term goal.
I would say they're doing the right things by trying to work on the Cape. There are various ways and avenues of them publishing and showing their research different places. You should have them all do some research in the class, whatever it looks like, and maybe take the ones you really like and then tell Joanne that they want to present here. They can present. No,
Right.
I'm serious. And Joanne, if you ask nicely, Joanne might say yes. I'm
Oh,
kidding.
I would, yeah.
I know you would. I know you would.
I would always say yes to
I know.
Humbert.
I know. I was.
Always.
I know. But so these are these avenues that help. Okay, help anyone get just their research out there. Now, clearly, a data scientist in sports has to be well trained, as you know, not just in the domain knowledge which you're giving them, right? That you're teaching sabermetrics. That's domain knowledge.
Yeah.
But the other part of data science, the other part of like success in this field is they have to have enough coding chops to be able to do the work themselves. They can't rely on others to do the coding for them. Data scientists these days have to do the coding themselves. And that's not a high bar. It's not being a computer science major. It's not being, a PhD in computer science or anything like that. They just have to take enough coding that they are like, I could do that, So, but then they also have to have enough statistics. And this is where they actually probably need 2 or 3 or 4 courses. To do it right, they should really be very good at machine learning, artificial intelligence, modeling. They need a modeling class, and they need basic statistics. That's the data scientist. That's the person getting all the jobs now in the game. So they have to have domain knowledge, which means knowing baseball well. They have to have some coding and the goal is always enough coding that you're not relying on anybody else to do the work for you. You got to be able to do the work. And then having enough statistics to be able to say, yeah, I know what a random forest walk is. Bayesian thinking versus frequentist thinking. This has got to be sort of fundamentals of this kind of job now.
Excellent.
So
Because
get them on those courses. Yeah, go ahead.
You're
Sorry.
actually starting a data science minor here at Providence College. So that's something I'm working on developing with several other professors here. So that's
Good.
that'd be
Can you
ideal.
start-
I'd have a student who does the minor and then also takes the sabermetrics course, and then that'd be
But have them do projects as much as they can, and have them like try to put the projects in Fangraphs. They have a community Fangraphs where you can just sort of submit your work to David and others, and they'll go like, "Oh, this is cool. I want to show that," and then ask Joanne nicely, and we'll get them here too. Okay. The point is,
excellent.
they have to start getting it out there, and if they hit some roadblocks and maybe you give them a B when they think they deserve an A, what you say to them is write it up in your own blog post. Then do it. Just get out of their way and say, this is on you to have a great career. So if I gave you a B and you think you deserve an A, write it up, put it on a blog, and try to get it out there and share it with the world. And it's not rocket science to try to get these jobs. It's knowledge you have and the willingness to keep going, right? To keep trying for something. It took me a gajillion years to get my PhD. It took me forever, right? But I kept at it because I wanted to teach at a university. It's fun. It's actually a pretty good job. I don't know anyone else here is a university professor, but it's pretty sweet. It's good work if you can get it. Right, Father?
Exactly. 31 years of students, it's paying off.
I retired as a professor in 1982.
Yeah, Bill's had this, you've had such a great career, Bill. It's been so, no one calls him Dr. Nallen, but we should.
No,
We should call you.
it took me 14 years to get my PhD, and eventually it became the motivation was for people to simply say, "Hey, what's up, Doc?" But nobody ever did.
I'll say it right now. Hey, Bill, what's up, Doc? We're done. We got it. Check that box.
Yeah.
So I'm sure I've missed questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Justin, I don't know if Justin's still here, maybe not, but hopefully I got your question about the two seamers. I think the two seamer frequency is basically because pitchers are learning it's more effective for them than their four seamer. Okay, it hasn't gone completely away because some people have more effective four seamers than two seamers. I don't know if that helps, Justin, but yeah, that's my take on that. Justin, robo umps. I love this.
Yeah.
Okay, so robo umps don't have the corners curved, I don't think. I'm not sure that's right, Justin. Maybe they are in some places, but what I will say is this: the strike zone, as it's called, is not the strike zone that is as it's defined in the rule book. Okay, and this has been true for forever, right? This has been true since there's been umpires standing behind a catcher. So if you go to, and this has been shown, if you go to a strict strike zone defined by the rule book, and you have the robot do it, call balls and strikes, batters, catchers, pitchers, and umpires will all go, what? Wait, are you kidding? To both kinds of pitches. To certain balls, they'll go, what? But it's a called ball. They'll go, no, that's a strike. Whoa, okay. Or the other way, strikes. A strike gets called, and they're like, no way that's a strike if you're a batter. Or, the surprise has been prevalent in the MLB, AFL versions of doing these robo umps. Or AFL is the Arizona Fall League. Maybe another league where they've done something differently. But they're calling the real strike zone with these robo umps, and everybody's surprised. People in the dugout, pitcher, catcher, umpire, batter, they're all like, what? Okay, it's the robot. And I think there's going to be an adjustment to the new robot strike zone. It'll take some time. People will get it. They'll adjust, but you're going to have a bumpy road when you bring this to the major leagues, which I think is inevitable, kind of. I really think it's coming. I think it's probably a good thing. But that's me. Other people disagree. I totally get it. I understand why you might say, no, I love the umpire making all the wrong calls. I love that. I love the wrong calls. They're so good for the game. I understand. Okay. I'm sorry for the joke. Maybe that, like Justin says, they're curved edges. They're trying to play with the robot umps to make it like real umps. I think that's a crappy idea, but it looks like they're doing it. They're trying to, what the oval is, the real strike zone is about a ball width, the real strike zone called by all umpires, to all batters, it's about a ball width off the strike zone is a strike in the middle of the strike zone. Right in the middle of the strike zone, it ovals outside. Technically, a ball gets called a strike. But then the corners, especially the lower corners, the lower and upper corners, which are strictly strikes, are called balls because there's an oval. The strike zone is actually an oval rather than a rectangle. So the corners are not called strikes, but you get an extra little bit, like a ball width in the middle of the strike zone, outside the zone. They're often called strikes. Often as in when you map the strike zone, which is the 50-50 line between call balls and strikes, it's actually outside the strike zone. So trying to mimic that, trying to reproduce that with the robot, I think is a mistake. I really do. But that's me. I'm throwing my opinion out there. All right. Am I missing any good questions in the chat? Well, any other questions here in this group as we dwindle down?
We're doing pretty good for retention. We had 40 people at the max. We're at 20 now, but
Yeah.
See, I'll ramble on and people run away in droves. That's what
well, have to go feed their cats.
Is Seamus still here? He's probably long ago.
He left.
Well, I'm glad to hear your students are going to the Cape. I hope they go to a team that's like Wareham, because Wareham in particular is very interested in trying to all their interns to really push their analytic skills. We met at Wareham, but
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because Wareham, they're one of the more successful programs. They won a lot of championships, had a lot of major leaguers, but they're also last in the league in attendance.
Well, they're not on the Cape officially.
Right.
You got to go over the bridge to get there.
Yeah.
So they only won on the continental U.S. I guess. You call the Cape the continent? I don't know. Is it an island? I don't know. I don't want to get in
I
trouble.
guess it's technically an island once they dug the canal.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I thought. So anyway, the Wareham group, though, the GM there, the guy who hires the interns, is very interested in analytics and getting his interns up to speed in some of this stuff. Now, there may be other teams doing that. He always makes the claim to me. I do 90% of my official scoring work at Wareham because it's the easiest drive. But he makes the claim, the GM of the Wareham team says that he's got the best, he's the only one really pushing analytics really hard, looking at bat speeds, contact, bat ball velocities, that he can collect these data.
Right. I noticed that Wareham also shifted more than other teams.
Yeah, no, I think they're more data driven than others, but again, I don't know much about the 9 other Cape teams. I know about the Wareham guys, and they take the analytics pretty seriously, which is good for the interns, right? It allows them to really start thinking more outside, like, how do we really use some of this data to help our players, So that might be a good place to start, is to try to get with Wareham. But I bet you once other team, there's sometimes slow adoption of this stuff, but I bet other GMs, it's so funny, right? I guess anywhere you go, and I've noticed this more and more as I started working, at Fenway for Major League Baseball, looking at all the, helping score these games. Then, you go to a high school game and you go to the Cape, and you watch how these coaches that have been doing it for a while interact as if it's like money's on the line. That's how serious they are about it. The general managers and the managers of these teams on the Cape are so competitive. It just seems like the competition, the competitiveness is sort of out of line for what it is. It's a summer showcase for these great talents. But the manager of Katuitt is like, so upset at the manager of, whatever, Orleans, because of that little slight, I'm going to get them for the next 10 years. It's this kind of stuff, which I just shake my head at. I'm like, dude, teach them how to play better, let them showcase their talent, because everybody's watching. You wouldn't believe how many scouts are there. I mean, it's really well scouted. It's a great spot to be if you're a college player. Showcase what you've done. Anyway, I hope your students have a great experience.
Yeah, I'll definitely encourage them. Some have talked about it, but I haven't heard anything official yet. So I always say, if you need a letter of recommendation, I can go ahead. So
Good. Do I owe you an email? Am I deficient on something with the project we talked about? I'm sure I am. Now I'm feeling super guilty about dropping.
Yeah, if you are, then I don't remember what the question was.
I don't. That's the problem. I'm really bad at it. Why don't you? I'll do it. I will. I'm writing a note. Search my email for the one I owe you.
That would be something I asked you about last summer.
Yeah, but I think you sent me some data and I just dropped the ball, and I'm sorry. I really am. We will make it up to you, because that's
right.
what we're supposed to do.
I forgive you.
Thank you. Let's make sure I come through that.
Yeah.
Forgive me when I come through. How's that? Is it a deal? You can forgive me anytime, but I want to make this right. So how are we doing? Anyone else? Adam McFadden asks a very interesting question. Brian Kenny has said the error should be eliminated. How do old school thinkers think about this? I don't care about errors. I'm kind of with Brian Kenny, but it's really, I also like official scores. These are some of my best friends. And that's their main job. The reason they've had this job for over 100 years, 120 years, is all errors and not errors. I guess we would put the official scores out of work if we did that. Yeah, let's keep they're nice people. Let's keep them employed. No, yeah, that's my final answer. So I don't agree with Brian Kenny, even though theoretically I think he's right. But I like official scores, so let's keep them employed.
Well, Andy, anyway, you have really brought it all out. So, I guess we're probably going to have to wrap it up at this point. And then I'm sure that, the two of you, Andy and Humbert are going to carry it on for who knows how long, for how many seasons. So we're going to be listening and wanting feedback from both of you also to find out how things go on the Cape this summer, for one thing, but also I want to thank everybody who has stayed in this long, because we did almost get sort of like a bonus hour out of this. And I'm really impressed at how many people have stayed for the entire duration, which is really great. And one thing I do want to make sure everybody remembers, take a look at the SABR calendar of events and see how many meetings there are out there. Certainly watch for us. We will have one in March. Don't have the speaker confirmed as yet, but I'm sure we'll be able to find somebody, pretty interesting. There's a lot out there, but watch the calendar for the upcoming events, and also take a look at what everybody else is doing that is on that calendar as well. You never know, but I think that we did very well tonight in order to attract a lot of people. I knew, Andy, that you would, and that you would be able to keep us so engaged for the entire time. Really.
Well, I
took notes.
I might have put one person to sleep. I'm not sure. I can't tell by the image.
Oh, Well, I don't know. He hasn't moved, maybe we better, yeah. Well, he's on his own now. But anyway, thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. And I hope that we see you again on future meetings, and let us know what you think also. Feedback is always appreciated. So,
49 days from today should be opening day at Fenway Park.
okay,
Very cool.
should be, huh?
Yeah.
All right, maybe we'll see a few of you there also. Well, okay.
Thanks
All right,
again.
thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Good night.